Like, what's the concept where that's important or considered valuable?
Yeah, so I'll give my take on it. I'm influenced by things like Aikido, my own personal experience in conversation I've found over time. One of the ideas in Aikido, for example, is when you're facing like a chaotic situation, you want to be as efficient as possible as you're moving through that situation and not expending too much energy on each, more than necessary on each one, and not causing more damage than needed. And you can kind of approach that with conversation as well. So if I'm tense and resisting something where I don't really need to be, if I can kind of connect and shift, that could be beneficial over time. So to be able to be relaxed in chaos, still alert, but not like rigid, right? And to essentially not be in this tense state whenever there's something changing in our environment, because more and more things are changing all the time. And maybe once we are able to kind of understand that that's really sort of the environment we're in, we can learn to kind of flow with that a little bit more by being more relaxed.
How does it adapt, though? Because there's situations where you do want to, for lack of it, like you mentioned, cause damage, or you do want to damage an idea or something. So does it adapt at all?
Oh, I don't mean when I say relaxed, I don't mean that there isn't forceful movement and action. It's that it's well timed and not where it doesn't need to be. So like if somebody attacks me, like conversationally or physically, and they approach and I'm tense, I'm going to have a tougher time kind of responding to that. If I'm loose but alert, I can respond quickly. I may even like counterstrike, right? So if you're in like a debate, right, that's really going back and forth, and you may want to, pick things apart. You may want to, go a little bit different. Look, I mean, debate's great as long as people are not getting like emotionally. Well, if it's degrading trust, that's not really going to be a good situation. Typically, in the types of situations I'm thinking of, personal and professional. So it's like if it's about the idea, but if you're sort of attacking an idea, and someone rightfully or wrongfully is, if their ego is sort of attached to that or their identity, and they don't realize that, then it can basically degrade trust. And the thing you're trying to enter into the conversation is going to be not only maybe ignored, but completely resisted. So you may be right, you may have done nothing wrong, but trust is degraded. So it's really about, emotional intelligence at that level, just to understand how things are connected.
And a similar note, I just heard, it was last week, I think Stephen Wolfram was saying, you were saying Newtonian physics, but he was also talking about calculus. And it was Lex Friedman interviewing him, and he said, is calculus right or wrong about how it describes the universe? And he said, no, it's wrong. It's wrong. And I thought, damn it, I spent how much time studying calculus just to find out it's completely wrong.
Well, Newtonian physics is wrong, but incredibly useful.
Right. The same with calculus. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, it'll get you through your day. You don't really need I don't need quantum physics to get through my day. I mean, I'm not a quantum physicist. A lot more people can do well with Newtonian model.
Right. Yeah.
Well, on certain levels.
And Bill, who said calculus is wrong or can be wrong?
Stephen Wolfram. Yeah, I can share the link somewhere with you, Patrick. If you want to watch the video, it's great.
I mean, Einstein didn't trust his own math. He had people help him with it. He had people help him with the proofs that were better mathematicians or cared more about the math side of it. I mean, he was more visionary than organizer, in my opinion. Who has more charisma, Trump or Harris? I mean, it might totally alleviate the tension in a way that allows him
Let's
to
answer it.
breathe a little bit.
Patrick wants to answer it. I'll answer it too.
It's good to answer it because I can't go over time. I'm happy to tell you both though. But like in terms of charisma, what is charisma, right? Like I want to define the term again. I think it's being able to make almost anybody laugh and make them feel good, and get your way. I don't know about the last one, getting your way, but like the first two, I think Trump. I think he just does that well. Like that's basically all he does. Like at least when he's publicly speaking. So
yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, it's regardless of how I feel about the politics or the person, I agree 100%. The charisma's on that side.
I have people in my circles that would answer the other side. They think Trump has no charisma at all and no tact, and is just offensive and bad, and like there'd be nothing he could do to get his way or to induce humor.
I need to tweak my answer just a bit. The question was charisma, not who's the most coherent. I have issues with his coherence if he speaks for more than 30 seconds.
So. I'm telling you, there are people that would still say he is. It's like I feel that charisma is subjective, and it depends. I do think I do feel that early in Harris's campaign, she had a real strong vibe. People were getting nervous, and then I think she kind of lost some of that as the thing went as it paced out, and I think she went to a different stance that was less charismatic to less people.
But like when it comes to like how do you relax during tension, I think of breathing or pausing, taking a couple seconds to realize what somebody's saying or asking, having my desk or my outside clear, having my body clean, right? Like clean shaven. I hopped in the shower, like I'm dressed, making sure to watch people, how they phrase their questions and follow-ups. If they're concise, maybe start explaining why I'm asking certain questions, how I've exhausted all of their attempts to get information from elsewhere. They might open up a bit more. If they're excited, match that excitement. So that was like one of the most valuable takeaways I got from this conversation.
And I would add, relaxed is curious. When we're relaxed, we're curious. And everything you were saying was talking about curiosity. It's typically tight. And so it's not that isn't useful. Being able to have available to you curiosity at more and more times pays dividends, in my view. Okay. All right. So we're doing a special recording today of Mindset Dojo, the types of conversations we have in our circles, just setting the tone. We'll pull some highlights from this. Should go without saying, everything here is the opinion of each individual, not representative of any corporation they may be affiliated with, past, present, or future. And nothing is fixed, at least I'll say that. Over time, we may evolve some of our ideas, and that's why we kind of explore some of this. So, yeah, all right. What do you guys want to put out onto the table today? What's spicy? Pick something extra spicy so you give a good taste.
Politics or current news.
Patrick, do you have anything? You're on mute. Patrick, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, I was going off there. No, I do like your safe harbor because I've never heard it before that opinions may change over time, which is totally true, totally valid. But I haven't heard that in a safe harbor, so I like that. In terms of spicy topics, I didn't come prepared with any, but if you gave me a minute or two, maybe I could think of one if we riff for a bit.
All right. How about we each do one? So you can go second or last. Bill, you want to go first? I know you've got one queued up.
Well, it did come up, but I don't know how conflict laden it'll be. That your whole concept, or maybe you were going to defer it to Jeremy, is the idea of the relaxation. I think you were saying relax in conflict, and I wanted to hear more about it or push back on it. Like, what's the concept where that's important or considered valuable?
Yeah, so I'll give my take on it, and I'm influenced by things like Aikido, my own personal experiences, and these reflect in conversation I found over time. So, one of the ideas in Aikido, for example, is when you're facing like a chaotic situation, you want to be as efficient as possible as you're moving through that situation, and not expending too much energy on each, more than necessary on each one, and not causing more damage than needed, right? And you can kind of approach that with conversation as well. So if I'm tense and resisting something where I don't really need to be, if I can kind of connect and shift, that could be beneficial over time. So to be able to be relaxed in chaos, still alert, but not like rigid, right? And to essentially not be in this tense state whenever there's something changing in our environment, because more and more things are changing all the time. And maybe once we are able to kind of understand that that's really sort of the environment we're in, we can learn to kind of flow with that a little bit more by being more relaxed.
How does it adapt though? Because there's situations where you do want to, for lack of it, like you mentioned, cause damage, or you do want to damage an idea or something. So does it adapt at all?
Oh, I don't mean when I say relaxed, I don't mean that there isn't forceful movement and action. It's that it's well timed and not where it doesn't need to be. So like if somebody attacks me, like conversationally or physically, and they approach and I'm tense, I'm going to have a tougher time kind of responding to that. If I'm loose but alert, I can respond quickly. I may even like counterstrike, right? So if you're in like a debate, right, that's really going back and forth, and you may want to, pick things apart. You may want to, go a little bit different. Debate's great as long as people are not getting like emotionally. If it's degrading trust, that's not really going to be a good situation. Typically, in the types of situations I'm thinking of, personal and professional. So it's like if it's about the idea, but if you're sort of attacking an idea, and someone rightfully or wrongfully is, if their ego is sort of attached to that or their identity, and they don't realize that, then it can basically degrade trust. And the thing you're trying to enter into the conversation is going to be not only maybe ignored, but completely resisted. So you may be right, you may have done nothing wrong, but trust is degraded. So it's really about emotional intelligence at that level, just to understand how things are connected. So I may have one conversation with my brothers in a certain way, in a same conversation, but in a completely different way with my former spouse, because of just where people's sensitivities are and where their conditioning's at, and how committed they are to stay in a conversation, the level of tension, where the tension is, things like this.
Might be tricky to know at any given time for someone though, because there's situations we talked about last time, the toxic positivity concept, that everyone's a great team player, but you're marching on a product that ends up completely losing and tanking a company. That's happening right now. So how do you know when you should be in that, and when you should maybe push things a little harder. I mean, how do you know the difference?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes back to trust, right? So if I trust that someone gets offended, that I'll be able to work with them through the conversation without negatively, you know, without creating a negative feedback loop, right? Or I'll say like a judgmental feedback loop that degrades the conversation, then I can really challenge things more. If I don't trust that I can handle an adverse reaction, I may be hesitant to challenge things and then only connect with things in a positive way, which then leads to what you're talking about, I think, Bill.
Right. Yeah. How about a leader? Has a leader ever seen that as like weakness? They may perceive that as weakness. Like they want a fight, and if you don't fight them, they perceive that as weakness, and then they may not take the ideas as seriously. If you don't fight back.
Yeah, I mean, I think trust is built in various ways. I mean, it may be that's where to engage with that person. That's like what they're going to. They need that type of energy to engage. And then you're gonna. It's not that there's a specific right way to do it. It's that would be pretty. If I look at the principle of efficiency, that would be pretty efficient because if I tried to be like all indirect and passive and deferential with a person that needs something straightforward to move forward, it's going to be taxing for both of us, right?
Yep.
We're just kind of dancing around doing nothing. Another person may need that distance and that flow to be able to kind of connect with. I mean, the focus energy balance, I call it the mindset awareness assessment or exercise that we do. It's part of the Tory gate, like the symbolic threshold. That, I mean, the way somebody that kind of scores out or is shows up for somebody else or themselves or for me as visionary collaborator on one end of the spectrum versus driver organizer, they're going to have different conflict dynamics and different conversational dynamics that are preferable. So like our old thing from a former corporate dojo, it depends, Bill.
That's true. It does
Had my
depend.
property.
Okay.
Come on, push back on it harder than that. Yeah, what do you got? When does it fall apart? Give me an extreme example.
Yeah. Well, like from like we can take the news right now and say that there's extreme tension. I'll say Elon Musk is going into UK politics right now really hard. There's tension there. It's not a kumbaya, shake hands around the fire. It's tense and it's ugly, and it should be because they're talking about serious issues, and not get to get take one side or another. But that fight is actually really valuable to have, and instead of what's happened, I think, in my view of UK politics, is people are afraid to speak their mind. Now you have someone from the outside speaking their mind, whether they're right or wrong, and now you have a free exchange of ideas. And so tension at that point is not only valuable, it's really necessary to push the things along to the future. So I don't think there is trust on their side. I don't think there's any happiness with one side or the other to the other, and that's okay because everyone else wins on this conversation that's happening between two people who are conflicting at that point. If that makes sense.
I think it makes sense. I mean, I have this thought going through my head. What if Elon Musk was really upset with Mindset Dojo and started like trashing Mindset Dojo? I think it'd be great. I mean, I just like think of all
Exactly.
that energy that would be coming around the organization, and like there would be a lot of people that are what is that thing even, right? I mean, some people it would be ridiculous, but some people would be like, oh, we need to go look at this, right? Like it
Yep.
actually creates a lot of focus,
Yep.
you could argue. So if you can kind of understand it that way, that wave of nuts is like just part and parcel for getting the focus, you might have a different mindset around it. If you get, it's morally offended and can't engage the conversation, you might be missing your opportunity to join that conversation while it has a lot of focus. So
Right. Well,
yeah.
and it also shows a lack of, if someone's afraid of someone pushing back, it shows a lot. I think it can show a lack of confidence in your own idea. Like if you attacked mindset dojo and we just crumbled, well, maybe we didn't really believe in it in the first place. Like attacking an idea really tests whether you actually believe what you're doing or not.
That hits for me personally. Like in a previous, corporate lifetime, we were doing a corporate dojo, and someone thought it was wrong to have a dojo metaphor used in a learning environment, a corporate learning
Yes.
environment, and it looked good on video when I was recorded and how I handled that. It looked great. That's not how it felt inside. It felt I was personally attacked. And I reflected on that and meditated and met with that person several times. And later on, that person became an advocate.
Yeah.
And is one of the people that's listed on the Circle Communities pattern that was published with the Inner Source Commons Foundation. But it took many conversations. I had to dig deep on that one. And even I did have a little bit of a heads up that somebody might be upset. And so how do you handle that situation in the moment? And then how do you learn from how you handled it? Because that kept coming up. It kept coming up. And eventually, like, we were able to really both learn from that situation. But that person was motivated for self-discovery because they were a martial artist in that case. I don't know that when somebody's really forceful and they're not motivated for self improvement in the way that you perceive someone as perceive someone to be self-improvement, it can look and feel really harsh, right? And that's where it gets kind of tricky with somebody like Musk. I don't know him personally. I only know how he shows up for me in the media and would I want to work for him, and that I can ask myself questions. But I've never sat down and had a meal with him. I've never had him pick me apart. I've never done anything that offends him to see what it would be like.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about that from our last conversation, is that I was attacking the person, but there is the concept of a public personality or persona, and then at least legally it is okay to challenge the persona, and usually it's a shortcut for something. You don't mean necessarily this person's idea right now that they still have, but that they communicated some idea at some point, and it's a shortcut to kind of tell what that idea is. Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah, I have an axiom that's probably already been said, but I feel like if Elon Musk or Michael, the guy that you gave an example on, were to come out with like a slew of accusations against Mindset Dojo, it would take more than one true or legitimate accusation to take it down. Like if Elon said 100 bad things, but all of them could be disproven, I think Mindset Dojo would actually benefit from it, right? Because it drums up press, and then we can, fight back against all those. In the case that you gave, there was only really one issue with it, and you were able to easily handle that, it sounds like, on the recording or the live session. So that's
it was handled over a period of months. It was a very, very deep thing to contend with. And it was not just local to that corporation. That same sentiment was going on at that time indirectly. It's like around some of the corporate dojos, DevOps dojos that were going with like Dojo Consortium. And there was like people that weren't martial artists that thought dojo shouldn't be used because of cultural appropriation. And at that, so then I'm like, all right, I wasn't in a great position to respond in some other dimensions. So I spoke to our legal team. I spoke to our marketing team to understand what the risk levels were, and they were very low. I spoke to Zen masters, Aikido sensei, anybody could get a hands on them, or martial artists. What makes it legitimate? What doesn't? And I deepened my understanding of what a dojo is and where it's valid and when and to what levels and who it matters to and why. And so like for me, it was a great thing, but it wasn't about a proof. It was about a deepening of. So it was sort of like feeling into the emotional wave, and then what I was learning that there are more insights coming through that instead of trying to just sidestep it. With Musk, that's a trickier situation, maybe because he's a lot of power, and this person wasn't in a position unilaterally where they could shut it down, right? Where Musk might be in a position to unilaterally shut something down. And that's scary on a power level, right? And so it's the thing is, if he had zero power in the universe, nobody would care about what he thought at all. And so that he has accumulated, it seems to have accumulated for now, an immense amount of power, I think is what people are upset about, because it's like a threat to their agency. It's my theory right now.
Depends on the issue. I mean, you can use your power for good or bad, I guess, and it's very subjective as far as that concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if Jordan Peterson's another polarizing figure. If you like Jordan Peterson, you're like, oh, it's great that he has all this power. If you think he's harmful to the universe, you think it's bad.
Well, that's interesting. You said if you like him, like you might not like him, but the ideas may be solid.
Well,
I find
if
that
there's things you can appreciate about, if he does certain things you can appreciate the utility for, at least, that's one thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's when someone says something, and even if the person is like, I don't know about this person, but the thing they say is like, ooh, I like that idea. You can detach it and say, I'm gonna run with that idea, even though this person is maybe not someone that I'd otherwise put a lot
I'm
of
not
stock
going to
in.
give away if I like him or don't like him, and I'm not even saying it would be stable. That could shift over time. What I will say is consistently, I feel that sitting down with somebody like Elon Musk or Jordan Peterson would be an interesting, thought-provoking, curious experience to have in one's life overall.
Yeah.
That's a belief I have. It's not a
I'll-
claim that it's true. It's just a belief I believe I have. I think
I'll say that and sorry to cut you off, but I'll say that I've found his first 7 rules out of his 12 rules that he's written about very effective and useful in my personal life. So I really like the ideas he set forth. I've made no effort to research about his controversies or him as an individual, so I've formed no opinion on him, but I really like his ideas that he presented in the book.
Yeah. There you go. Perfect. Yeah. The ideas can get attacked. That's kind of where I made a mistake last time, as I was attacking. We're talking about Musk, attacking the person, not attacking the idea. When you can separate the idea and attack that, I think that's a lot more valuable and more meaningful.
If you look at the difference, in my view, that between the two persons, if I said turn difficult conversations, who's able to turn difficult conversations? But probably both of them, right? They can turn difficult, into catalyst for change. That's the dojo tagline right now. They both can do that. Personally, I feel that conversationally, Jordan Peterson is much more skillful, and that's how he became sort of popular, with the way he handled himself in a very challenging conversation, tense conversation, and interview that went viral. So I think there's some appeal to just conversational skill, whether you like the ideas or not. I mean, it's like in the positions or not. It's like the way to be able to navigate a conversation as a skill is something Jordan Peterson, I believe, is quite masterful with. When he's centered and on his game, I'll qualify it. That's my opinion, though.
Yeah, might be the practical way. Although you don't want to hopefully, you don't get persuasive to the point where you could say utter lies, and then because you're so skilled at conversation, that people are buying the untruths that are.
Part of the skill, when I say conversation, would be to understand the risk in doing that, the risk in false rhetoric over time. I would think he's generally well thought out.
Isn't it always tricky though? Because just like you mentioned, the concept of dojo is so innocuous to me, but there were people you and I both knew from several different sides who ran into conflict with it. Just the idea of, like you're saying, using the term
Well,
dojo. It's like,
yeah, I mean, here was some unexpected conflict. We created a level conversational space. So you have managers and executives in a conversation with people that are not in there on a level playing field. And they don't have as much power as they're used to having in the conversation. And it becomes apparent that the conversation flows differently. And the ones that have trouble with it are the managers. And then when we talk, I would have one-on-ones with them periodically, and they'd say, it was a little difficult at first, and then but the strong ones grew from it, and they're like, when we're not in this circle, we have a different type of conversation. There may be a directive. Okay, no problem. Is the circle useful for you? Yes. Is it useful for the other person? In my estimation, I ask that same question to the other person on the other side of that. Is it useful for you? Yes. Is it useful for the other person? In my estimation, in your estimation, yes. Okay, then it's useful because everybody agrees it's useful. If key people didn't agree it was useful, it'd be problematic. So that's the trust factor, because the people started to trust that sitting in the discomfort and the difficult conversation could accelerate flow, morale on one side and profit on another. And so they're willing to roll with the change.
yeah, or two. All the topics have been too agreeable. We need like a real. We need a true knockdown.
Well,
Fight.
we could play some perspective game. We could this is just top of mind. What do people think about the tactics between Elon Musk and RFK Jr.?
Are they conflicting? I didn't even know that was happening.
Oh, you've been checking that?
No.
You've been tracking this, Patrick?
I read a clickbait article. I figured it was clickbait about Elon posting and calling himself Ozempic Santa because he uses weight loss pills. It wasn't Ozempic. And apparently RFK is strongly against this. But I thought it was clickbait because I didn't know if RFK responded to that in inner circles or on Twitter about it. Do I have that right, Michael?
I'm not tracking it so closely, but I think the interesting thing is you have two people in a cabinet or in a power circle. It's literally like one person's agenda it's totally subversive to what the other person is trying to do, right? And is that sometimes you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. Other people are like, oh, I should, it's free exchange of ideas. It's been interesting to see how people respond and react to that. How Trump has responded and reacted to that. What he, it brings up what he says at different times and how Trump, in my opinion, isn't so sticky on what he says. Like it can shift in time, and he'll say, "Oh, I always said that." And he'll say, but then if you press him on it, he can give some way it actually makes sense. I don't know. Maybe this doesn't make sense to press. It's just like, where is it going to kind of land? I think I think the substance, if you get down past the sizzle, I think the substance does have quite a bit of meat or steak. Not to choose a position against, plant versus animal, but it's quite an interesting thing to kind of unpack. So these are different sort of brands of or ideologies of how to approach health, and that's a really important conversation, I think, for the country to start having. If this is how it has to happen, and that it's happening, is good, in my opinion.
So that I might say that to simplify it, Musk might be more on the side of doling out pills if they seem to be helping people, while RFK might be more natural solution might be a
and RFK, from what I understand, had a very negative health experience due to a vaccine or some kind of shot or something. And if you've when I've talked to people that have had a negative health experience related to something like that, they tend to have a much different viewpoint on health.
Well, if you almost die from something, or you know someone who died from something, definitely you're gonna
right. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to look abstract. It's going to
then flip it and say people who haven't had that experience, that's also a skewed outlook too. It's like not knowing the severe consequences of some actions is maybe not a great thing. Yeah, the tricky thing is I don't think they've had enough time to test those drugs right now. I think it's essentially a live test on the population now. So I don't know how the trial's going to work out in the long run. We'll find out.
Now we're into something.
This is about as spicy as we can get for topics. I feel like this reminds me of I'm not sure if this is related or if we can go off this, but my one buddy from college mentioned it was kind of funny around 2020 or 2021 is when players on sports teams, the NFL, NBA, were given like a little more leeway on weighing in on political topics. Like I know there was a ton of pushback on Colin Kaepernick when he started to kneel during I believe it was the national anthem, but like in the years following, there was a little bit more leeway. But during one of like the most frowned upon debated topics was the vaccine. There were a lot of players who said, "Oh, I'm not getting the vaccine. That's bad. It hasn't been tested." And there was a lot of pushback. So it was kind of funny that the vaccine was one of the first things that some professional sports players weighed in on from like a political perspective.
Well, it's the idea that you're going to make a choice for someone else goes against someone's personal agency. The idea that you would choose something that's not in the best interest of everyone goes against the collective interest. So this is like the classic tension line that a social animal, it's not even human, a social animal has to do, like a parrot. I grew up in my mom's parrot store. It's not, I would say, oh, it's beyond human. It's mammal. And it's like, well, parrots aren't mammals and they have the same sort of tension lines. And so you can kind of look at this and go, well, that's the thing. That the thing is, people don't see what's good, for everyone collectively the same way. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that, oh, how could that person do that? Well, they may think that's the best for everybody, even though it makes no sense to you. It's like you can't see. It's very difficult to be able to have any kind of glimpse beyond your own worldview, even for people that, do deep meditation. People I meet in certain circles, I would expect, wow, they've been X for, decades. It's like, but they still have a very narrow view. And it makes me realize, as expansive as I think my view can be at sometimes, it's probably incredibly more narrow than I realize, more times than I would care to admit, that my ego would care to admit.
Yeah,
it's a humbling thing to recognize, in my view.
The tricky thing about the greater good or the societal good of it is that any individual's going to be that much more impacted by it. And unless society, or you get a promise from someone. So say someone says you have to take the vaccine and it causes some horrible thing to you or your family. Well, what's the promise then about what's going to be done when that happens? What are you going to do for me then, now that you've damaged, me or the family? Well, usually it's nothing at all. It's just do it because I say, oops, I screwed everything up. Oh well, hopefully next time it works. But that's why I'm reluctant about advice too. If someone's not there to pick up the pieces when advice fails, then
well, I mean, for somebody that's a medical professional that knows and trusts the model of understanding which assesses the risk of the vaccine, they have a model of understanding they know, like, and trust. I'll say know, like, and trust. I think.
But there was no unified thought pattern in the medical community. We can say
there never can be. There's always counter.
Yeah.
there's always multiple models. Every model is incorrect. Like it's a George Box quote, all models are wrong. And I think it's expanded to, but sometimes useful. Newtonian physics is fundamentally wrong when you dig in to the details. When you look at it from a quantum physics standpoint, it's obvious. And that doesn't explain the beginning of the universe. Like it's not actually, it's because I don't know that I've never resolved. Can you even get everything mapped? It breaks my brain. So it's like, people are all looking at this thing. Oh, well, of course the risk was assessed by a model you like and trust. So you think there's no risk. The other person doesn't, like that model, or has reviewed that model and determined it to be insufficient or untrustworthy. And so they have no basis to make that risk determination the same way.
And a similar note, I just heard, it was last week, I think Stephen Wolfram was saying, you were saying Newtonian physics, but he was also talking about calculus. And it was Lex Friedman interviewing him, and he said, is calculus right or wrong about how it describes the universe? And he said, no, it's wrong. It's wrong. And I thought, damn it, I spent how much time studying calculus just to find out it's completely wrong.
Well, Newtonian physics is wrong, but incredibly useful.
Right. The same with calculus. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, it'll get you through your day. You don't really need quantum. I don't need quantum physics to get through my day. I mean, I'm not a quantum physicist. A lot more people can do well with Newtonian model,
right,
than quantum model.
Yeah.
Well, on certain levels, I could even.
And Bill, who said calculus is wrong or can be wrong?
Stephen Wolfram. Yeah, I can share the link somewhere with you, Patrick. If you want to watch the video, it's great.
I mean, Einstein didn't trust his own math. He had people help him with the proofs that were better mathematicians or cared more about the math side of it. I mean, he was more visionary than organizer, in my opinion. But I want to go back to something about, do you think the attitudes of the brand of the NFL versus the brand of the NBA, what was going through my head is the brand of the NBA would do fine generally with the players being more outspoken compared to the brand of the NFL. If you think of how a basketball team runs versus like a football team, it would seem to me.
Boy, the current audience isn't backing that up. All the NBA is incomplete. This is a crash and burn right now.
Is it? I'm not following it.
The ratings are a disaster, complete disaster.
Really?
They keep going down and down and down and down. Oh yeah, like they used to have the lock on the Christmas. Remember the Christmas used to play on Christmas. It used to be only the NBA. Now they get completely blown out by the NFL right now. Yeah, no one's interested.
Before Bill said that, I was going to say it's probably because the individual player probably has so much more power when there's only 10 people on a competitive field versus 22. Like, just if we're going strictly by the numbers, but I didn't realize the ratings were so down.
Oh yeah.
But if you pull that string for a second, it would make sense to me. Like someone being outspoken on a football team is representing like 53 people, plus the organization is much. It's a stronger move to do it, right? It's like versus in comparison. I think that makes sense to me.
You mean that if they said something, it would have more influence or seem?
It seems to like if you think like, hey, I'm a player on a team of like, there's so much more trust you have to have for your teammates in football than in basketball because of the injury factor, I would think.
Think about who's the punter for Kansas City? Do you remember that whole firestorm? He came out. He was a Catholic, speaking at a Catholic university, and he was talking about how the norms of female and male and being in a marriage. He's Catholic, so he's coming with kind of a traditional Catholic. And then some of the players on Kansas City kind of disavowed. And I think Patrick Mahomes even said, I never talked to the guy at all. He's like, maybe literally never met the guy at all. He's on Kansas City and he's never talked to him.
If you're a punter, you're not really part of the team in a lot of people's minds.
But we'll keep slicing it, and then we'll say, well, that's true for a place kicker too. And if you're on the offensive line, that's probably true too.
Well, it depends, right? It depends. You're saying it's not maybe the way to gain favor with some of the teammates is one way to look at it. But I mean, a lot of times, I remember Peyton Manning, like the kicker said something, and he's like, "What do you think about that?" And he goes, "That's just our idiot kicker. No, I don't think anything about it at all." And it was like he can say whatever he wants, no problem. I thought that was a beautiful way to handle it. It was basically like,
don't use the word idiot though.
I mean, that part was a little, but he said it with humor, in less condescending than I said it. So it played. I remember like, wow, that was smooth. They just threw a bomb at him, and he's just like, disarmed. What bomb? That was some conversational skill. That's probably why he's in so many commercials.
Someone shared a great video yesterday I watched where they showed Elvis. This is really going back, if you remember Elvis. And then he was at a press conference, and the lady was asking him what he thought of the protests against Vietnam, and he's like, "Lady, I'm an entertainer. I don't know anything about what it should." And then she said, "Should other entertainers have an opinion?" He's like, "Lady, I don't have an opinion." He had no opinion on anything. He's like, "I get on stage and I sing, and that's it." And I kind of feel that's maybe where we should be. It seemed like a heroic statement in the current climate right now.
Well, it's the question I would ask my in-laws if I was still married at a holiday party would be this last year would be, who do you think has more charisma, Trump or Harris? And see what variation of answers come back. That's probably why I'm divorced. So there are questions like that.
Charisma.
But if they think about it and laugh, I mean, you've made a strong connection. So you got to time that. You got to time that question at the person when they're going to be willing to connect with the humor of it versus the discomfort only. So it's like it's not what you say; it's the timing. It's like their mood, your mood. Do you trust yourself to clean up any backlash? Are you going to make it worse if you can't clean it up? So part of the reason, that I'm excited, for example, this next role I'm going into is I get to work. I mean, there's difficult conversations, a lot of them, right? There's internal change resistance and things like that. And that's appealing to me, partly because I trust myself in those environments. I also find it interesting and whatnot. But if I didn't trust myself, I'd be like I'll use a Jordan Peterson line, like a frightened cat walking around all the time, which won't be healthy. You don't want to be a frightened cat all the time, which comes back to Bill's first thing about stress. If you're a frightened cat all the time, that's not a good state for your body to be in.
Yeah. It's interesting, though. Your situation sounds like there's situations to go in where maybe there are you can throw some punches because maybe it needs a little disruption kind of thing. So I don't know.
Well, if somebody was like, here'd be a perfect way to do that question, right? If people are locked in a negative conversation about that's not really increasing perspective about politics, it's just in a negative spin. You go, hey, you opt into the conversation, you feel into that emotion, say, hey, you get a space on the floor, like, all right, I got a serious question here. Who has more charisma, Trump or Harris? I mean, it might totally alleviate the tension in a way that allows them.
Let's answer it. Patrick wants to answer it. I'll answer it too.
It's good to answer it because I can't go over time. I mean, I'll give you. I'm not even gonna say who I vote for on recording. I'm happy to tell you both though. But like in terms of charisma, what is charisma, right? Like I want to define the term again. I think it's being able to make almost anybody laugh and make them feel good, and get your way. I don't know about the last one, getting your way, but like the first two, I think Trump. I think he just does that well. Like that's basically all he does. Like at least when he's publicly speaking. So
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, it's regardless of how I feel about the politics or the person, I agree 100%. All the charisma's on that side. It's,
I have people in my circles that would answer the other side. They think Trump has no charisma at all and no tact, and is just offensive and bad, and like there'd be nothing he could do um, to get his way or to induce humor.
so
It would
that means he's getting all the votes via logic and reasoning, and
so,
not via
like,
charisma.
I need to tweak my answer just a bit. The question was charisma, not who's the most coherent. I have issues with his coherence if he speaks for more than 30 seconds. So.
I'm telling you, there are people that would still say he is. It's just like he's viscerally. It's just they have a visceral response. So it's just a feel. It's just the feeling, just the sight of him. Like they would walk by the Trump Tower in Chicago, and if I said, "Hey, check that building out," they would just be like, they would go negative, right?
Yes.
They say, "Why did you point to that?" It's like, well, why is there a reaction? Maybe we should explore that. Let's get a little bit curious. Are you in a curious mood? No, I'm not. Okay, talk about this later. Now I'm really interested. But it's like I feel that charisma is subjective, and it depends. I do think I do feel that early in Harris's campaign, she had a real strong vibe. People were getting nervous, and then I think she kind of lost some of that as the thing went as it paced out, and I think she went to a different stance that was less charismatic to less people.
Yeah.
And I think maybe if you're looking from that standpoint, for somebody getting shot, that's about the most charismatic I think you could be. That I will say.
And coming back from it. Yeah.
Maybe people would say, but I think he was pretty charismatic in that. Maybe it's which moments were they charismatic, which moments were they not charismatic. What does it mean to be charismatic is another sort of bend to put on it.
Yeah. That's a great ad for what you're saying, I think, is to relax into the thing, in that if you can be charismatic and win over people who might normally push back on what you're saying, that is a huge skill and valuable too. So I can see it now, that instead of you don't always punch. Sometimes you try to bring people in by how you
connect where they're at.
Yeah.
That is fundamental to Aikido. It's in the Aikido. It's got it in there, right? And so the harmony, connection, and so it's counterintuitive because you have to reprogram your natural response to connect with something that is coming at you in a negative way, and blend in with it. And it's like if you can blend in with tension in well-timed ways, that's the basis for humor. That's the basis for corporate, personal, and professional ascension. In my view, it takes practice for almost. I don't think anyone's natural with it. It'd be like saying someone's a natural comedian. They may be funny, but to be skillful takes a lot of practice over time.
Yeah.
More and more situations.
That's interesting.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna close it up. Patrick, are you good to come back on camera? Oh, hold on.
So my internet dropped, and now I'm back. All right, cool.
Oh, you missed a beautiful little No, I'm just going to close it up. So any final thoughts for this session? Was this spicy enough? Good enough?
Yeah. I did learn the relaxation. I think I get it now. It took the whole session, but it finally sank in. So
It was purposeful for Bill. Any useful insight for you, Patrick?
Yeah. So I've never really had to think out like what are the specific tactics to do to relax under tension. I wrote out a couple in the first 10 minutes of this conversation. I'd love to get y'all's opinion on it. But like when it comes to like how do you relax during tension, I think of breathing or pausing, taking a couple seconds to realize what somebody's saying or asking, having my desk or my outside clear, having my body clean, right? Like clean shaven. I hopped in the shower, like I'm dressed, but also making sure to watch people how they phrase their questions and follow-ups. If they're concise, maybe start explaining why I'm asking certain questions, how I've exhausted all of their attempts to get information from elsewhere. That's why I'm asking them specifically. They might open up a bit more. If they're excited, match that excitement. So that was like one of the most valuable takeaways I got from this conversation, even though it was fun and good to hear y'all's opinion on some of the other topics. But those were some of my takeaways.
that's great.
I would, yeah, and I would add, relaxed is curious. When we're relaxed, we're curious. Everything you were saying was talking about curiosity.
Yeah.
When we're judgmental, it's tight. It's typically tight, and so it's not that isn't useful. There's times for that, but I think being able to have available to you curiosity at more and more times pays dividends in my view, and that takes blending in. So
Nice.
great
Very
chat, everybody.
Yeah, nice list, Patrick. That was nice.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording and then